Richard Dawkins's The Selfish Gene. It's one of those books, one of the most influential and definitely one of the most misunderstood science books of the last 100 years. Just the title alone paints this cold, dark picture of nature. But what if that whole interpretation is just flat out wrong? Let's dig in and find the true and honestly far more fascinating story behind the selfish gene.
And at first glance, yeah, the book seems to confirm our worst fears. I mean, this sentence right here from the very first edition looks like the smoking gun, a clear statement that we are, deep down, hardwired for selfishness. It's a powerful and, frankly, a pretty chilling thought. But here's the first major twist. Dawkins himself later said, ignore that. He called it a rogue sentence and admitted it was totally misleading, that it didn't capture the real heart of his argument at all. So, if we're not just born selfish, what on earth was he really trying to say?
And that leads us to the central question of this whole explainer. Forget the title for a second. What's the actual theory that Dawkins put forward? Well, to really get it, you have to stop looking at the world from our perspective, and instead, you've got to adopt what he calls a gene's eye view.
Okay, so first things first, we have got to bust the central myth that was created by that incredibly provocative title. The book isn't actually about selfish people or selfish animals. It's about something way, way smaller and a whole lot more fundamental. So on the left, you've got the common misconception that we, as organisms, are the selfish ones. But the actual argument, on the right, is that the gene is the true unit of evolution. And that word selfish, it's just a metaphor. A gene doesn't have feelings or motivations. It just behaves in a way that helps it survive and get copied into the next generation. To really get this, we've got to rewind the clock way back to the beginning, to the primeval soup. Dawkins' story begins with what he calls the replicator. These were the first molecules that, just by random chance, figured out how to make copies of themselves. That was it. That was the dawn of life, and with it, the dawn of competition. So where do we come into all this? Well, from the gene's point of view, we are simply survival machines. Yeah, think of any living thing, you, a lion, a tree, as an incredibly complex vehicle, a kind of lumbering robot that's been built and programmed by its genes with one main goal: protect the precious cargo, the replicators inside, and get them safely into the next generation. Now, this gene-centered view immediately creates a huge problem, a massive puzzle. It's a paradox that Darwin himself struggled with, and it's really the true heart of the book. I mean, think about it. If every gene is just out for itself, why would a bee sting an invader, killing itself just to protect the hive? Or why would a mother bird risk its own neck to save her chicks? All of these selfless acts seem to fly directly in the face of the idea of a selfish gene. And this right here is the big reveal. This is the book's true purpose. Dawkins even said later that if he could go back, he might have called it the cooperative gene or the altruistic vehicle. Because the main idea isn't that we're selfish, it's that selfishness at the gene level is the very engine that can produce altruism at our level. So how do you get from selfish programming to selfless action? The answer, incredibly, doesn't just come from biology. It comes from mathematics, and specifically from game theory. The key concept is something called an evolutionarily stable strategy, or ESS for short. So what is it? An ESS is basically a pre-programmed behavior that's so successful that once most of a population adopts it, no other strategy can invade and do better. It's the winning playbook that natural selection eventually locks into place. Dawkins uses this fantastic analogy to make it all make sense. Think of genes as oarsmen in a boat. A single gene can't build a body by itself, it's part of a crew. For the whole boat, the survival machine, to win the race, all the genes have to cooperate and row together. Any gene that tries to mess things up just sinks the boat, dooming itself along with everyone else. Suddenly, cooperation isn't just nice, it's essential for survival. And you can see this play out in game theory models, like the famous prisoner's dilemma. In the long run, a strategy of just being a jerk all the time, it doesn't usually win. Instead, a really simple reciprocal strategy called tit for tat often comes out on top. And the program is simple. Cooperate on your first move, and after that, just do whatever your opponent did last time. This builds a system that rewards cooperation and punishes betrayal, creating a stable world where altruism can actually flourish. But hang on, Is the selfish gene the whole story? Well, as huge as this theory is, it's not without its scientific critics. And it's crucial to remember that this is still a very active area of debate among evolutionary biologists.
For example, the systems scientist Yanir Baryam argues that the gene-centered view is a useful approximation, but that's all it is. His models show it really only works perfectly in populations where all the genes are mixing around completely at random. The moment you get subgroups forming, the simple selfish gene math starts to break down, and selection might act on multiple levels at once: the gene, the organism, and even the group itself. Now, near the end of the book, Dawkins drops another bombshell idea: a second kind of replicator. One that doesn't operate in the chemistry of our bodies, but in the soup of human culture. He called it the meme. And no, we are not talking about a funny picture of a cat on the internet. Long before that, for Dawkins, a meme was a unit of culture, an idea, a song, a fashion trend that replicates itself by jumping from one brain to another through imitation. Now, there are really two ways to look at this. The weak version is that meme is just a cool new term, a useful analogy for how ideas spread. But the strong version, well, that's way more radical. It suggests that ideas are like viruses of the mind, using our brains as survival machines to copy themselves, whether they're good for us or not. The whole theory of memetics has faced a ton of criticism, and for some pretty good reasons. Unlike a gene, which is a physical piece of DNA, it's not really clear what a meme is, or where one ends and another begins. Plus, culture often changes in a way that's totally different from genes. We learn things and pass them on directly, which is nothing like the slow, blind process of Darwinian evolution. So let's bring it all back home. The ultimate point, the big revelation of the selfish gene, isn't some cynical message about how we're all fundamentally wicked. It's this beautiful, stunning paradox that the relentless, metaphorical selfishness of our genes is the very thing that builds the foundation for cooperation and altruism at our level, the level of us, the survival machines. And that leaves us with one last massive question to think about. If our bodies are just vehicles built by our genes, and our minds are colonized by these replicating memes, where does that leave the us? You know, the conscious self that's actually doing the thinking. It's a question that blurs the lines between biology and philosophy, and it's the profound and maybe a little unsettling legacy of this masterpiece.